Alright, so I am in Matrix Gold. I'm not gonna use any gold commands other than like dropping my gems in there. But other than that, I'm gonna use straight up base Rhino commands. I dropped in the picture that you sent me. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off with this basket first, and then we're gonna build a ring out from there. So first, let's drop in our ring rail so we know where the heights and everything have to go. So I'm gonna do a circle in front view. Center of circle is the origin, and then the radius is gonna be 15.7. By default, this is set to radius, so the diameter is 15.7. So we're gonna do 15.7 divided by 2. That'll give me my ring rail. I'm gonna drop that in a different layer color. And then now I'm gonna drop in my gem for the center stone. The center is 5 millimeters. So all right, GB gem. Let me change the size of my gem real quick. All right, and then we're gonna bring that up. All right, so I'm gonna adjust that if I need to. But let's see this picture. So we're gonna build this head or this basket style setting. All right, so they wanted 1.2 millimeters, the prongs. And then these are the specs. These specs are important just because the thicknesses of the gallery rails and the space in between is kind of informing how high we have to make the top of the shank. So let's go ahead and draw those lines really quick. So since we have our ring rail, we're going to start building out some reference points from the ring rail. So they're telling me that the bottom gallery rail is 1.2 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my ring rail and I'm going to run offset, and I'm going to offset it 1.2 millimeters. All right, let me go to a different layer color. I go here for now. Okay, so 1.2. All right, so now it's telling me that the space in between these gallery rails is 1 millimeter. So I'm gonna take this curve that I just created and I'm gonna offset that by 1 millimeter. All right, and then the top gallery rail is also 1.2 millimeters. So I'm gonna take that curve that we just created and I'm gonna offset that by 1.2 millimeters. So now we have all these reference curves that we're gonna use, so that way we know where we gotta cut our gallery rail. We know how high our stone is gonna have to be. We know where the top of the shank is gonna have to like roughly be placed. So what I'm gonna do now, so basically we're gonna draw a cylinder underneath this center stone, and then we're gonna cut out the middle of it to make the gallery rails. That's what it, like, just looking at the picture. So like, all right, the steps that I'm doing is just me looking at the picture and saying, oh, hey, this looks like they did this. There's a million different ways we could possibly build out this ring, but I'm gonna just do what I think they did. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run line, and I'm gonna snap my line to the quad of this curve. I'm gonna toggle on both sides in the command line, and I'm gonna shift click so that way it stays horizontal, and I'm gonna just click it. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this curve. So basically we have 4 curves right here. We have the ring rail, and then we have the 3 curves that we built. So we're snapping horizontal lines to the 2 middle curves. Hit both sides in the command line, shift click so that way it's horizontal. All right, so let's make those curves red. just so that way we could kind of see a little bit better. All right. So this right here, this curve, we need to draw a line off of that one too, because that's going to be the top of the gallery rail. So this one is just going to be so that way we can see where that top gallery rail needs to end at. All right. So since I know that this is where the top gallery rail is going to be, the center stone is probably going to be just a little bit lower, maybe about right there. And that's good. All right. So, let me see. I gotta get out of wireframe. So I got out of wireframe, and I like to work in like my plastic rendered view. But anyways, I'm gonna draw a cylinder. I'm gonna go into top. I'm in top view, and I'm gonna do a cylinder. The base of the cylinder is gonna be the origin. All right, and so in their picture, the gallery rails are not like, you can't see the gallery rails from the top view in their picture, so we're gonna make sure we don't see that in ours. So I'm gonna just put it like maybe right here. All right. So I clicked, and then let me go back to 4 view. And just kind of make it long enough. We're going to cut it. So just make it long enough. To where we have some metal to work with. All right, let me see. I'm going to bring these lines forward so that way we can see them no matter what we're doing. So we're going to take the cylinder, and I'm just going to drag it up to the top horizontal line that we drew, because I know that they want it to the top gallery rail to end right there, right? And then since I already drew these other curves, I know that basically I'm going to be trimming out metal in the middle using these two lines. But before I do that, we can see that this basket kind of tapers in. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know if they taught you this. I'm sure they probably did. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift. And that's going to allow me to sub-select a surface. So like this cylinder is a poly surface. So holding Control and Shift and clicking that is going to allow me to just select this face. And I can do the same thing with the edge. It's going to get me the same result here. So what I'm going to do is, once that's selected, I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click either this square or this little square right here. Either one is going to allow me, while I'm holding Shift, it's going to allow me to 3D scale. So I'm going to hold Shift and then I'm going to click and drag in so that way we get a taper on this cylinder. Now, because the cylinder is so long, the taper is not as drastic as I need it to. So I'm going to drag it up, and that's going to give us a little bit more control. So I'm holding Shift. I'm going to click and drag in so that way we get that nice taper. All right, that looks good. So now I'm going to select these two curves. I'm going to do a crossing select. That's something that they probably should have showed you. So if I click and drag from left to right, that's a window selection. So that means that a window selection is when the thing you're trying to select has to be completely inside of the window. Whereas if I drag and click from the right to the left, that's a crossing selection. So anything that it touches is going to select it. It doesn't have to be totally in the box. But anyways, so I'm going to select these two lines, and then I'm going to run trim. And then I'm going to trim the inside right here. And that cuts that. So now when you run trim, Um, Now we're left with open surfaces. So I'm going to select this surface and I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to select the next surface and I'm going to cap it. I'm going to cap, and that's going to close those surfaces. And actually, I'm going to go back to this because we have to kind of put a hole in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to drag this in to make it smaller, but before I let go, I'm going to tap Alt until I see a little plus sign, and then I'm going to release. And so that created a copy of this object. And I'm going to do a 1D scale like that. And we're going to use this to cut a hole into this. So I'm going to select the item that we want to keep, which is what's going to be our gallery rail. I'm going to run Boolean difference. All right. And then I'm going to select my cutter. All right. So now we have a hole going down the middle. That looks actually really fucking thin. I ain't even gonna lie. That looks really thin. Let me see. The bottom of it looks super thin. The top of it is good though. All right. Never mind. All right, so I'm gonna go back to front view, select those two lines. I'm gonna run trim, select the middle of it because that's what I want to cut out. Select it again, that's the inner surface. That's good. All right, so now we can go ahead and take this object and this object, and then we're gonna run cap, and that's gonna close them up for us. So it was open before, and then I ran cap and it closed it. All right. All right, I'm trying to think, do we need these curves anymore? Let's see what else we gotta do. So I'm going to keep these two middle ones. Those are going to be useful to make the little airway that we have. But I'm going to get rid of this one so we can kind of clean up a little bit. We don't need that one anymore. And we won't need these two. All right. So now we need to draw the prongs. So to do that, I'm going to do line. And then I'm going to just kind of draw it up here. I'm going to draw since it tapers in, I'm going to kind of slant it out to kind of follow the slant of the gallery rails we just made. So I'm just going to drag that down. All right. And then if we look at this picture, it doesn't only slant in the front view, it also slants in the side view. So I'm going to go to my right view and I'm going to select it and I'm going to run rotate. I'm going to snap to one end and just rotate that in a little bit so that way it's slanting in front view and right view. All right. So this picture is showing that they want a 1.2 millimeter prong. So I'm going to select my curve that I just made and I'm going to run the pipe command. All right. So by default, it's asking for the radius. We can select diameter. And before we type in our diameter, where it says cap in the command line, select round. All right. And then you can type in your radius, 1.2, hit enter, enter again, and then enter again. And then there goes your prong. Let me see. So I want to kind of rotate it. I want to kind of rotate it out a little bit. So instead of rotating the prong itself, I just selected the curve. And I want to kind of rotate the curve out. And since I have I'm working with my Rhino history on, I always have history on. I just rotated the curve, and that affected the prong. So that looks good. Let's see. So we can see how they have it outlined. The prongs are kind of like going outside of the gym a little bit. All right, we got that. We can kind of like rotate it a little bit. It looks like they may have theirs exactly at the 45. So whenever you're rotating, if you hold down shift, it's gonna snap it to the 90-degree angles and then the 45-degree angles. So it looks like they have theirs at the 45. So we just gonna do that, and then we could mirror this one over, and then select the other one and mirror those over. Okay, and so now, so I don't know how they showed you how to do this, how to cut this metal. So you could do a couple different things. You could take this curve and you can extrude it and then cap it and then do a Boolean difference. So we're going to select all the items that we want to keep, and then we're going to run Boolean difference and then select this, which is our cutter, and that cuts that. So, but I'm gonna go back. So what I did right there, I just selected the curve, and then on the gumball there's this little ball, and I just selected that, and then you drag. You can also select your ring rail and then run extrude curve, extrude CRV. Make sure it's both sides yes, solid yes. And then that would do the same thing. And then you would just run a Boolean difference. Or you can run wire cut, which is where you would select your curve, which would be your ring rail, run wire cut. And then I'm going to crossing select the items I want to cut. And then I'm going to just enter through until the command is done. And it's the same end result. It's just a different way to do it. I'm gonna job bag this really quick. All right. So now that center, that basket setting, that's done. That's what they wanted. Bottom gallery is 1.2. The space in between the galleries is 1 millimeter. Top gallery rail is 1.2. The prongs is 1.2. The center stone is 5 millimeters. So now we have to build out the shank. Let me see. So for the shank, so the width, which would be in a right view or a side view, the width of the shank is 2 millimeters. And it looks like it stays 2 millimeters throughout. So it's a consistent 2 millimeter width. And then the thickness in the front view is 1.5 at the 6 o'clock, and then the 3 and 9. And then at the top, it gets thicker. So now looking at this shank, it looks like one piece. So this style of ring is called a cathedral. Like this shank style is called a cathedral. But I could tell that the way they did it, it's one piece. They basically made one solid piece of metal, like one egg-shaped piece of metal, and then they just cut like airways through here. So that's what we're gonna do. Let me see. And so looking at that profile, I also see that it's like sharp edges on the inside, and then it's domed on the outside. So we don't have any shapes, like, we don't have any like primitive shapes that'll give us that profile. So we're gonna have to combine two things together. So let's do let me see, where's my ring row? Let me not hide these. Change the colors this is on. And then take these curves, put those on my red layer, hide my red layer. Okay. So let me build out the rectangle. So we know that we need 2 millimeters in width. So I'm gonna do this in right view in the 6 o'clock position. So this curve right here, this red line, that's my ring row. So I'm gonna run rectangle. First corner of rectangle. We need it to be 2 millimeters. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on my grid snaps. And I know that each square is 1 millimeter. So I'm gonna snap to this end. And then I know I need an end on this side, right here. And the thickness is 1.5. So I'm gonna end at 1.5. But like I said, the inside of it has these sharp edges, but the outside of it kind of has this dome profile. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this rectangle and we're gonna explode it. Now when we explode it, it's gonna break it down into 4 lines. All right. So what we're gonna do is, so this line right here, the bottom one, we're gonna kind of use that one as a reference point. So I'm gonna change this one purple so that way we can see it a little bit better. But I'm gonna run a command called blend curve. All right, I'm gonna show you 2 different ways to do this. So you can do I don't know what it would be in the Rhino command line. Let me see. Arc. Deformable start point, tangent, extension, start point, end of arc. Yeah, okay. So you can do one like, let me turn off the grid snap. So you can snap an arc to it, but then you'll have these sharp edges, and then you'll have to do fillet edge, which is more steps. So we could just do blend curve, blend CRV. We're gonna select our first curve and then our second curve, and then it's gonna give us this nice dome. So what you could do is, and you can see it in the command line, a lot of times if you want to know how to do something, just read the command line. So it's saying press shift and select for symmetry. So I'm gonna press shift and I'm gonna select, and now it's moving equally. So we'll have this nice symmetric profile. So let me do it like there. That's good. And then we're gonna join it to this line right here. All right, so perfect. We have a profile, but the only issue now is that it's thicker than we need it to be. We need it to be right here at where this 1.5 line is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the curve, and then these little points right here, these are the control points. I'm gonna select these points, and I'm gonna decrease the height of this profile to where it is 1.5 millimeters. I'm gonna bring this one in so that way we kind of like, all right, that's good. All All right. And then one thing is that because I snapped to the grid to draw this profile, the profile is not actually touching the ring rail. So we need it to touch the ring rail, or it's not going to be the right size. So I'm going to just select the curve, and then I'm going to run move. And move is asking the point I want to move it from. So I'm going to snap to the midpoint, and I'm going to move it to the quad of our ring rail. All right. So we know that based on this picture, the bottom part of the shank is the same width and thickness as the midpoint of the shank, right? So instead of redrawing a curve and doing more work than we have to do, I'm gonna just take the curve at the bottom and I'm gonna make a copy of it and rotate it to where I need it to be. So I'm gonna run rotate, and then in the command line where it says copy equals no, select that so that way you toggle it to yes. All right. So now it's going to make a copy of it. So center of rotation, that's going to be your origin. And then we're going to hold down shift and we're going to click down, straight down. And then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees and snap it to that 3 o'clock position. So now we got a profile at the 6 o'clock and at the 3 o'clock. All right. So we can run sweep 1, which is going to create a surface with these profiles. So select the rail, which is our ring rail, and then select sweep shapes. So we're going to select this one and then this one. And whenever you're selecting shapes, you always want to do, you always want to go clockwise. So I selected that. So whenever you run a sweep, it's gonna, this little thing is gonna pop up. So what is that? So that is the seam of the curves. So you want to move that to the inside of the ring. And you want to make sure the arrows are pointing in the same direction. So if they're ever pointing in a different direction, you just hover over it and click to make sure that they point in the same direction. All right, so I'm gonna hit enter. All right, perfect. That's the bottom part of our shank. We can go in front view. We could even mirror this one over. And then we could join these two together. All right. So now we got our shank, or at least the bottom half of our shank. So now, based on this spec sheet, so we know that the width of this ring is 2 millimeters throughout. But then we know that just looking at it, we know that at the top it gets thicker. So we can still use this curve that we already built as a starting point for the top curve. So we're gonna go into our front view and we're gonna do a copy rotate again, but this time we're gonna be copy rotating the profile. Make sure copy is set to yes. And we're gonna rotate it from the 3 o'clock up to the 12 o'clock. All right. I'm gonna put this on my green layer. All right, we can go up. So this is our curve. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide the bottom gallery rail. I'm gonna put it on a different layer color, hide that layer color. So that way you can see. So we're gonna scale it up. So on the picture, we can see that it kind of lines up with the top of the gallery rail. So what we can do is run scale 1D. All right. And with scale 1D is asking to select your base point. So I'm gonna select the bottom of the profile at the mid or the quad. And then the scale factor is gonna be the snap into the midpoint of the top of the profile. And then you're just going to drag up. And that's, you just kind of get it to the top of the gallery rail. It ain't got to be perfect. So that's good. And so now we're going to sweep one again. Going to select our gallery rail. Select the profile. And then we're going to select this one at the 3 o'clock position. Hit it. Well, we got to make sure we adjust these seams. Bring it to the middle. Bring this one to the middle. That looks good. Enter. We're going to join. All right. Let me see. All right, we can bring this back. So what I'm gonna do to cut this metal, I'm gonna draw a line from F4. Snap it right there. Select the line, and then I'm gonna run trim. And select the object I want to trim. I'm gonna trim the left side. That looks good. And I shouldn't have joined these two, just because I'm gonna have to mirror it to the other side. So I'm gonna select this object and I'm gonna hit explode. So now we should have 3 separate surfaces, which is good. There's gonna be more than 3. All right, select this. Join. All right. So this one, I'm like, shit. Join that back together. Don't explode anything. So let me cap this. I really just capped it so that way I can have a cap right here. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the one at the bottom and I'm going to uncap it. So I'm going to hit hold Control and Shift, select that surface, and then delete it. Just because I don't want it there right now. So like, just from like a casting perspective, so this space right here, this is space that I would like put a box in to fill, so that way we don't have any investment relocation. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter for this model. So we could go ahead and mirror this over, join, alright, shit. This is interesting. I wonder if I accidentally rotated. I don't know. Whatever. All right. So let me see what else. So we gotta set the sides down. Or no, before that, we got this airway right here. But actually we do, so the reason I'm going to put these side stones in there first is because, so that way we can know how much metal we need to leave right here. Because we don't want to cut away too much metal and then have cutlets poking through So I'm gonna add a gym. I think the sheet said 1.5, 1.4. So 1.4 millimeter gem. Okay. And just kind of rotate it and mess with it until it's how you want it. I mean, this part really don't have to be as perfect as you think it has to be. Let me see. We have 5 on each side. So let me go into front view. I'm gonna work in front view for a little bit. So I'm gonna draw a line, and I am just from anywhere really, and I'm gonna line it up with the girdle of this stone. All right, and then I'm gonna select the curve. I'm gonna do offset, and I'm gonna offset at 0.15. I'm offset at 0.15 because for shear prone, I want my minimum spacing between the gems to be 0.15 millimeters. So I know that, all right, the space in between these lines is a perfect 0.15. So I'm gonna select those two curves and I'm gonna run tween curves. All right, tween curves is gonna give you a curve perfectly in the middle of the two curves you have selected. So I'm gonna put that on this lime green layer because we're gonna need that later to build our prongs out. So I'm gonna do bring forward so the curves are always in the front. And then let me hide that part of the shank. So for now, I'm gonna use these curves to mirror this gem. So, and the reason I'm doing that is because since the shank is not like a perfect, I think that honestly I could have did the top of the shank a little bit higher. But okay, it's gonna be all right. But anyways, I'm gonna take my gem and I'm gonna run mirror, and I'm gonna the start of my mirror plane, I'm gonna snap to this middle curve, and then flip it over and snap it to the other side. Right? So now let's show our shank. And then again, like I said, since the top of the shank is like egg shaped, you can't do a perfect like rotate copy, or even like a you can't do a perfect rotate copy or a polar array, so you kind of have to like if I was like doing this like for a job, I would extract the ISO curve and then run a matrix command, which is a whole hell of a lot easier, faster definitely. But let me hide this shank, and we're just gonna keep mirroring over until we get 5 gems. So I'm gonna mirror all of this. Mirror. I'm gonna mirror that over, and I'm gonna use the culet of this gem as a reference point, and just snap it over. And then I know I'm gonna have to take this stuff that I just mirrored over. I know that I'm gonna have to adjust it a little bit. So let's adjust that. All right. Rotate the gem. All right, so we need 2 more gems. So let's rotate. Let's rotate everything that we have here. Center of rotation, we're going to snap to a midpoint of this gem. Oh shit, that's not what I wanted to do. Hide the shank real quick. All right. Mirror, snap to the culet, show my shank. And then we're just gonna rotate this. All right. So now all these little groups of lines, I'm gonna use those to build out the prongs. So I kind of want to like, basically whatever angle these lines are facing, that's where how the prongs are gonna be facing. So I want to kind of like line it up just to where it kind of makes sense to the layout of the stones. So I'm gonna rotate it with the gumball, move it back to where it's in the middle of these two stones. Just mess with it a little bit to where you get it where you want it. I think this right here is good for these. Yeah, that's good. So I'm just making these a little bit longer. Shit. Disregard that. So I'm gonna rotate and make copies of this. Fuck. Let me. Alright. Snap from that culet to this one. Then this one. Nope. Let's undo that one. God damn it. Some commands have like an undo inside of it. This one obviously don't. So for these two gems, I'm going to have to start rotating it a little bit more because the slope of the shank is changing. All right, I'm going to rotate again. Snap from here to here. All right, and then we could drag these down a little bit. So now, using the lime green curves that I have in the middle, I'm going to run the pipe command. Let me see how thick they want these prongs. They want them 0.6. So what we're going to do is we're going to use those lines and we're going to run the pipe command like we did for the center. The diameter is going to be 0.6. And look how it just makes the prongs. Now, because I'm in front view, it centered the prongs to the middle. So what we're going to do is we can go to a top view. And we can select all our lime green lines. And we can just drag them out. Drag that out like that. All right. We can take this prong right here and we're gonna mirror it. I'm gonna snap to the Q-lid of this gem. Put that on the other side. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the other end gem. Mirror this. Right there. All right. So we're gonna take all our prongs. And we're gonna mirror in top view. All right. I'm gonna select my ring rail, and then I'm gonna do a wire cut to cut all of these prongs to the ring rail. All right. We don't need any of these curves anymore. So we can delete that. Mirror all of this over to the other side. I'm gonna change layer colors. All right. So now the only thing we have to do is cut out this airway right here. That's literally the last step we gotta do, and that's gonna, I'm gonna save it real quick. Alright. So I had just hid these curves earlier, but we're gonna bring those back. These two reference curves. So what I'm gonna do is select them, and then I'm gonna run bring forward so I can see them better. And then I want to see my reference photo as well. I hid that. Okay. I want to see my reference photo. All right. All right. Let me see my gems, because that's important. We don't want to. We don't want to take away so much metal in this airway that our gems are poking through. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line from the middle. Draw a line from the origin, snap it up, and I'm gonna draw another line from the middle, and we're gonna kind of put it around where we want it to end at. We could see on this picture that it's kind of ending somewhere where the third gem is, so we're gonna kind of do the same thing. So we're gonna take these two lines we just drew, select both of them, and then we're gonna run trim, and we're gonna trim both of these red circles. All right, and we can delete those lines. So now what I'm gonna do, I am going to select this curve. And so I just selected the one of the control points. I'm just dragging it in so that way it tapers towards the bottom. And it's still this nice, clean arc. I'm gonna do the same thing with the one that's closer to the center stone. Just kind of drop it down a little bit, so that way we have enough room for these gems. All right, that's good. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take these two curves. We could blend them together. We could do blend curve like we did earlier. Blend CRV. Select the two curves. All right, so that's perfect. So now we got this nice curve. And what we're going to do is we're going to mirror it over. We're going to join these two curves together. All right. And then we're going to extrude it. So like I said, you can use your gumball, use this little ball on the gumball, drag that out. You want to kind of center your extrusion. And then you want to cap it so that way it's solid. So that way you don't have any issues with the Boolean difference. And now you just run a Boolean difference. So you're going to select the shank, run Boolean difference, and then you're going to select your cutter, which is going to be what we just created. Hit enter. And there goes your airway. I'm going to undo that because I forgot about the prongs on the inside. So I'm going to undo. All right. And so now we need to make sure that we have our prongs on the inside selected. So select them on both sides, which I do have history on, so I don't actually have to select them on both sides. But I'm gonna just select it on both sides. We're gonna select our shank. So now we got everything selected that we need to cut, and we're gonna run Boolean difference. Select our cutter, hit enter, and there you go. Let's see. Literally the only thing that kind of I don't know if my profile was like rotated a little bit and it fucked this up right here, but honestly that's something that would be polished out anyways, so it doesn't even fucking matter. Yeah, and then other than that, like I said, like this right here, this is stuff that I would like clean up, like if it was actually being produced. But yeah, this is how you achieve that. And like I also said, I would make the top profile a little bit thicker to make it more egg shaped than I did, which will also give you more metal right here. But that's kind of the gist of it. And then of course, like so in Matrix Go, I have gem cutters. I have gem cutters, so I wouldn't put pilot holes on this because the gems are so small and the shank is so thick, so it likely cause a blowout. So instead of doing a pilot hole, I would do a divot. I would do a divot with a Boolean difference. But I mean, you would just use whatever gems you have. You would just do... well, I guess it depends. So if your gems are a mesh, you would do a mesh Boolean difference. And if they're poly surfaces, you would do a Boolean difference to get the same cuts. But yeah, that's how you make this ring. And then the same thing with this. You could cut out the seat. You don't have to, but it's nice to do for the setter. So yeah.